I used to wear a long sleeve shirt to school in Miami every single day, even during the summer, to hide how skinny my arms were. I remember one time we were after school, my friends and I were hanging out in someone's backyard and jumping on a trampoline, and I took my shirt off. There were like 6 of us. I kid you not, everyone stopped jumping when they saw how skinny I was. In one of our classes, I happened to stumble upon the concept of neuroplasticity, this idea that our brains are malleable, that you can change and effectively upgrade your brain, that you don't just have this like fixed way of thinking or being or believing or willpower. I mean, that you can actually change. You can elicit change on your brain, the most incredible super computer that exists on the face of this planet by far. You can't compete with the trillions of dollars behind all this technology, behind your phone. I mean, just think about how much time we spend on our phones, wasting away on our phones. This commitment that I made to myself to be true to my values, to be authentic, and to just do what I knew was right, no matter what people thought about me, and saying no a lot to people, activities, commitments that weren't totally aligned, it fucking worked out, you know? Like, it really worked out. Like, I made it. And I have difficulty saying that I made it. I have difficulty saying that because it's something that anybody can say, and it's just words. But the satisfaction that I feel in my heart when I say that, when I think about this place that I'm in now, right? It's the way that God and the universe rewarded me for having such a meaningful influence on the lives of so many people. People like you. People that have supported me. People have believed in me. I can't believe it. Life is almost not real. Life feels like it's a video game that just kind of spiraled out of control. It really feels like a game. And every single day, all I do is play. Before I jump in and start this video and give you unsolicited advice, life advice, and take you through what's worked for me, I want to give a small disclaimer. First of all, I completely acknowledge and understand. I know that this video is going to piss a lot of people off. And I can understand why. And I'm not going to apologize, but I'm going to let you know that if this does rub you the wrong way, I warned you. And perhaps it has more to say about you than it does about me. And for those that are likely to get pissed off, that probably pissed you off even more. But anyway, let's dive in. I'm making this video because I have officially achieved the American dream. And it's something that just clicked for me today, actually, just minutes ago. And it's as unbelievable to me as, I don't know, I mean, it's being here so early in my life is something that I never thought could be possible. And now that I know what it takes, I feel like if I had another chance at life, if I was reborn, if I was stripped away of everything that I was and everything that I own and everything around me and placed somewhere else in the world, I feel like I could recreate a similar lifestyle, quality of life very quickly and very effectively. And I owe so much of what I know, so much of who I am, and what I've accomplished to certain values that I was taught by my family, my mentors, my friends, and the environment that I'm in. But aside from all that, my willingness to grow, my willingness to learn, my willingness to challenge myself, to have difficult conversations, to say no often, very often, to opportunities that had surface level value, but ultimately they were more about instant gratification than deep, long-term fulfillment and satisfaction with myself and with my life. So this is going to sound very, look, I mean, I'm sure at some points throughout this, I don't know, speech, presentation, podcast, I'm going to sound arrogant, maybe even narcissistic. I may sound like I'm bragging, but I want to stress why I'm doing this and why I'm sharing this. I'm doing this and I'm sharing my experience because I am just completely blown away by what's possible. And I feel like this may inspire someone, especially I was going to say a young person, but honestly, I feel that what I'm going to share with you guys can inspire. What I share with you can inspire you, regardless of your age or demographic. And yeah, I mean, I genuinely feel like this is going to help somebody. So a little background, and you can learn more about me on my podcast, my website, etc. I grew up extremely privileged. I did. I know that. I grew up in a family of doctors, physicians, people that apply science to help others every single day. There's been a lot of hardships in our family, in my DNA. It's interesting. On both sides of my family, I've had examples of, men that have been through, I mean, so much suffering. My great-grandfather from my dad's side was a Holocaust survivor. One day he got home at the age of 11 and his entire family was gone. Since he was 11 years old, he had to do everything on his own. Everything. He had nothing left. And he went on to become extremely successful as an entrepreneur. My grandfather, on my mom's side, who's still living, 90 years old, and in great shape, actually celebrating his 90th birthday this weekend. He came from nothing. From nothing. Like, I mean, he's from a town called El Tigre in Venezuela. I mean, they had absolutely nothing. He started hustling in the market when he was about, 5 years old, selling cheese. Was the first of any member of his family to go to school. And I mean any school. He's got 7 or 8 siblings that he has supported since he was a teenager. And through his hustling and a lot of hardship, I mean, everything from going to prison to surviving 2 helicopter crashes. I mean, you wouldn't believe what this guy has been through. I actually did a podcast with him, funny enough. You guys should check it out. Anyway, he went on to become a legendary surgeon in South America. I mean, plastic surgery, eye surgery. And funny enough, my father, so that's my grandfather from my mom's side, my father is also an eye surgeon. And he took a lot of mentorship from my grandpa, Najib Salomon. So there's so many examples in my family of people that have made sacrifices and taken their suffering and made something meaningful with it. And I had the pleasure to be on the receiving end of, when they did something meaningful with it. You know, my brother and I grew up very privileged, like I said. We grew up in South Florida. Well, actually, I was born in New York. My brother was born in Minnesota. Our parents did the residency and fellowships, and then we moved to Venezuela, where my parents are from. I was raised there until age 6. Hablo español. I learned Spanish, my first language, and we moved to the U.S. at a very young age. Been living here now for 22 years, and I think I first learned about the American dream when I was, 10 years old. I think every American knows or has some impression of what it means to achieve the American dream. I mean, to me, it means having ultimate freedom. And being able to be who you want and do what you want and to be rewarded for it in a meaningful way, to have the freedom to think how you want, to be as you want, to do as you please, responsibly, ideally responsibly, and to live a fruitful life. And this is a country that has given us so much. It's given us everything. And if it wasn't for my parents taking a leap of faith and bringing us out here, I mean, none of this would have been possible. So first thing I want to say is I absolutely acknowledge that I'm privileged, that I always had access to education. I've had extremely supportive parents, and my family overall. Our family values are everything. They're everything. There's nothing more important to me than my family and the values that they taught me. And every day I'm striving to get closer to them and build and maintain our intimacy and our love, protecting it. And anyway, outside of all that, in my early life, I had a cognitive deficit, a mental handicap that I was diagnosed with, which was ADD. And for a long time, I didn't even know what that meant. I remember one time I was making conversation with a girl that I had a crush on back in elementary school. Carla was her name. And I told her that I had ADHD, and the way I spelled ADHD was the number 80 HD. It sounded a lot cooler back then than it does now. But anyway, I can't believe I told her that. I would take pills every single day to get by in school, and my parents supported me through that. I mean, they're physicians and they understood that this was the best way. I mean, my mom basically got a PhD in pediatric pharmacology before she gave the thumbs up to put me on this medication. And look, I mean, for a long time I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what I had. I didn't know that I was different. All I knew was I took my pills in the morning, my vitamins, as my mom would say, and I went on to school, and that was me. But that was about 8 years old when I started taking that stuff, and it's like cocaine. I mean, it's so strong, it's insane. And over time, I worked my way up to the highest prescribed dose. I ended up taking 60 milligrams XR, extended release. It's the highest prescribed dose of Adderall, by the way, on a daily basis. Sometimes I took 2 capsules of that. So, I mean, that is like recipe for a heart attack. Or 70 milligrams of Vyvanse. Like, I really needed some extra motivation, if you will, to get by in school. And as a young person, I mean, your performance in school has so much to do with your self-esteem. And so, I had no problem with that, no issue, until I started to deal with very serious symptoms, side effects that, I mean, completely destroyed my quality of life. And I realized that I was sacrificing myself, everything about myself, my authenticity, everything, my time, my freedom, my peace of mind, just to get by in school. And that was extremely disturbing for me and very traumatizing. The symptoms that I was dealing with, for example, include, but are not limited to, obviously anxiety, right? If you're on stimulants every single day, you get anxious if you're in a more sympathetic state. You pair that with poor sleep that you're probably going to end up getting on, extended release Adderall, and it just compounds. You become more anxious, more restless, and you isolate yourself because you become robotic. All you want to do is your homework, study. I mean, so anyway, I was anxious. My brain was so overactive that I spoke even quicker than I do now, and I had a stutter because my brain was just so overactive, and the combination of the anxiety with the stutter isolated me socially. I mean, I couldn't have a conversation. I was afraid to have conversation. I remember I wouldn't speak up in class at all, because I was afraid to get picked on by teachers. I was, like terrified, like petrified to be called on by teachers, because that meant that I had to speak for the class. And if I fucked up, I mean, you know how it is in middle school, high school, like, um, that carries a lot of weight. So I would turn like, I mean, my face would turn bloody red and I would start sweating profusely anytime that I even thought I was going to get picked on. I mean, and if we were doing a presentation, oh my God, like I mean, that was the most intense fear. I mean, I could feel it in my body now as I describe it. That was just, I mean, torture. Like, and I mean, like, just, it was worse than death. At least that's how it felt back then. Um, and then aside from that, I mean, I was skeletal. Um, for example, in high school, I was about the same height. I think I'm like 5'9" or so, maybe 5'10" on a good day, maybe 5'8" on a bad day. And I was skeletal. Like I was about 120 pounds. You know, I think that's what, like 57 kg and 175 centimeters. And now, as a reference, I'm 77 kilograms, so 170 pounds at 5'9", 5'10" on a good day. So I put on 20 kilograms, since then. But anyway, I was skeletal. I was anxious. I was restless. I was socially isolated. My escape was, yeah, video games, RuneScape, Call of Duty, fishing. It's my number one skill by far is fishing. I love fishing. Any kind of fishing, fly fishing, spear fishing, fly tying, offshore, inshore, you name it. Um, and yeah, I mean, I was putting everything on the line for the sake of getting by in school. And even then, even on the highest prescribed dose of Adderall and everything that I was sacrificing, giving up, I was still a mediocre student. And I was like the worst in my class. Like I was the class clown, like believe it or not, even though I was an anxious wreck, I would still find a way to make the little friends that I had laugh their asses off. I didn't take school seriously at all for a very long time. And I didn't know that I had a brain until, I don't know, late, later into my bachelor years. I didn't know that I had a brain, honestly. Uh, anyway, there was something that changed my life. There was a summer that totally changed the trajectory of my life. I had been taking Adderall for 8 or 9 years at that point, and I had somehow managed to find a girlfriend, believe it or not, God bless her and her family, who started to express a reasonable degree of concern regarding my health status. I mean, I used to wear a long sleeve shirt to school in Miami every single day, even during the summer, to hide how skinny my arms were. I remember one time we were after school, my friends and I were hanging out in someone's backyard and jumping on a trampoline, and I took my shirt off. There were like 6 of us, maybe 7 of us on the trampoline, and I kid you not, everyone stopped jumping when they saw how skinny I was. I'll never forget. My brother thought that I looked like a Holocaust survivor, and I know that sounds terrible, but it was the truth. I mean, he was being serious when he looked at me every morning as we got ready for school. Anyway, my girlfriend at the time and her family expressed some concern about my health status. My brother did as well. I started to grow concerned. I didn't want to go to college feeling so insignificant, lacking confidence, anxious. I didn't want to go to, I just didn't feel like that. I had to do something. And by the luck of the draw, by the grace of God, the summer going into my junior year, I had signed up for a summer scholar program at the University of Miami. And I actually had signed up for to do a course on viruses. I don't know. I felt like it would beef up my resume, give me some experience on a college campus. I thought it was going to be a good time. And I guess maybe they didn't fulfill their enrollment requirements, and anyone that had signed up for the viruses course got merged into a neuroscience program. And I was like, oh, I mean, I guess that's pretty cool. Neuroscience, like learning about the brain and how it works. That's great. And man, I mean, that really was by the grace of God. I had no idea. No idea. I mean, anyone listening to this show can appreciate the difference that neuroscience, an understanding of neuroscience and how the brain works, can benefit someone that had a, quote unquote, broken brain like me, right? I had no idea what would happen as a result, by the way. Like, I was just going to this course. I didn't know what to expect. I was interested in learning about the brain, like whatever, but I wasn't who I am today. I wasn't this like scientific guy that likes to understand physiology and how my inner world works. Like, I wasn't that person. I just want to make that very, very clear. I didn't have this wisdom or perspective or life experience, none of that. Okay. I just went into this like, all right, like, let's beef up the resume. um, so anyway, up until that point, like I said, I had been taking all this Adderall. The only time that I wasn't on Adderall was, on weekends and summer breaks. And that might sound nice, but it actually became a problem because as my dosage went up and, my tolerance went up and all that, I became more and more physiologically and psychologically dependent on it to feel like myself. And on the weekends, the contrast between who I was and how I felt compared to the weekdays was so fast. I mean, it was just, there was so much contrast that it was like two completely different personalities. Like, I had a split personality basically. And then on the summer breaks, which were a lot longer, like spring break and then also the summer breaks, I mean, I ended up getting withdrawals. Like, I felt like crap. And if it wasn't for the fun that I had during those breaks, I would have been absolutely depressed, no doubt. And in many instances, I was. I didn't know what anxiety meant back then or depression, but I can look back and I tell you with 100% confidence, now that I know what that looks like and feels like, that I was absolutely there. Um, so there I was, summer break on a college campus, the University of Miami, beautiful campus. And for about 8 to 12 weeks, I was taking neuroscience classes. And in one of our classes, I happened to stumble upon the concept of neuroplasticity. This idea that that our brains are malleable, that you can change and effectively upgrade your brain, that you don't just have this like fixed way of thinking or being or believing or willpower. I mean, that you can actually change. You can elicit change on your brain, the most incredible super computer that exists on the face of this planet by far. It's way more powerful than AI. It's way more powerful than whatever NVIDIA chip and Google. I mean, it is by far, the most incredible super computer that exists. We use our brains to make the supercomputers, by the way. You know what I mean? It is, and it's more than just computing. It's consciousness, right? I mean, you could say consciousness is based beyond the brain, throughout the body, and that's a whole other conversation we can get into. And I'm sure I'm going to have guests on the podcast that can elaborate on this and really do this topic justice. But anyway, um, so there I was learning about the brain, and I stumbled across the concept of neuroplasticity. I realized I had some degree of agency and autonomy over my brain. And I was learning about this while I was on a college campus, not on medication. So I had finally the chance to socialize in a meaningful way with new and interesting people from all over the world. I had the chance to, you know, engage with professors in a very unique way as well that I had never done before. I mean, college campuses are amazing because they're just like growth environments. They're like estuaries in a way. They're just designed to grow and protect and nurture uh evolution. You know what I mean? Like, there's no place like a college campus. There's really no place like it. It is the coolest experience ever going to college. Um, so I had unlimited access to the gym, to the dining hall, social life. After our classes, we would hang out, have a good time. And it was then that I felt inspired to start hitting the gym. And I mean, hitting the gym wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go and do a push pull legs, 8 to 12 reps. There was, look, Instagram wasn't really a thing back then. And it's not like these things were well established. Like, now, anyone and their mothers know what a hypertrophy interval is. You know what I mean? Like, back then, I knew nothing about fitness. All I knew was there's a gym, you go and you lift weights, and you eat. So there I was, taking advantage of this access that I had. And I remember I would hide in the in one of the corners, one of the far corners of the gym that had some machines. And I mean, the people that use these machines, and no offense, by the way, but it's like the only people there besides myself that were using the machines on a regular basis were the ladies and older people. And from a distance, I would like peek over and admire the guys that were standing in front of the mirror, lifting those big free weights, doing their bench press, etc. And I kind of look at that. I'd look at it down at my arms, and I'm like, all right, this is where I'm going to stay for now. So I did I started to make a habit of lifting and eating. I mean, I started eating so much. Like, I was like a sponge. I mean, think about it. I was extremely underweight. I was surviving off of Ensure shakes, like my only source of nutrition every day outside of like some dinner with my family. I mean, honestly, God bless my mother. She's an extremely hardworking professional. So is my dad, obviously, but out of her, how busy she was with work, she would always make us dinner and we would always sit down and have dinner together. God bless my parents. I fucking love them. And we ate very, very well at home. But again, remember, I was on amphetamine, so I wasn't very hungry. So I'd eat what I could. But throughout the day, my nutrition was limited to Ensure shakes. If you don't know what that is, it's basically a bottled multivitamin protein shake without that much protein in it. And it's extremely processed and is full of crap and microplastics, and it's like toxic. But, for people that are on medication, all kinds of medication, it works. It helps you get by. And that was what I had every day. I had the dark chocolate was my favorite. I had maybe 2 of those a day. Most of the time I had just one. I wouldn't drink like really any water throughout the day. My mouth was always dry and disgusting. And then I had dinner. So all of a sudden I'm on this college campus lifting and I'm starting to eat more. I'm not jacked up on amphetamine. So, my stomach, my digestive system has, better motility. I am more motivated to eat. I'm stimulating hypoglycemia and using, destroying muscle fiber. Like my body's getting hungry. You know what I mean? Like I'm getting hungrier and I'm able to refuel and I'm also able to sleep and then socialize. So basically I start to build momentum and just to, this might sound unbelievable. What I'm about to say next might sound unbelievable, but I want to emphasize how absolutely deprived I had been for so long of nutrition, of sleep, and socializing. Okay. Here's what I wanted to say. In about 3 months, I gained 25 pounds of lean muscle mass. And I mean, like completely fat free. My body became a sponge. And every day during that summer program, I felt more confident. I didn't even know what it meant to feel confident. I was a kid. I didn't know what this meant, but I could look people in the eyes and maintain a conversation. I would smile at strangers. Like I start to make my way into the free weight section of the gym. You know what I mean? Things were changing. My brain was changing. And so, notice how incredible it was that I was learning about neuroplasticity while engaging in the habits that we know now are simply are the most effective means to upregulate neuroplasticity, right? Sleep, nutrition, exercise, social life. You want neuroplasticity? You want your brain to grow and evolve in a meaningful way? Do that. Do more of that. And everything started changing. I mean, everything started changing in my life. Everything. And I started to kind of connect the dots. It wasn't so conclusive yet, but I started to connect the dots. And I started to, basically I had this like a little bit of a eureka moment. So I decided, I was like, well, look, I mean, something's changing here. Something's happening. Something's going on. I'm feeling better. My girlfriend and her family have been concerned about me up until this point. My brother can't believe that I look the way that I do. My friends are afraid of the way I look. I know that I'm anxious, that I'm not confident. I know that I can't continue my life this way. So yeah, I was at a crossroads and I decided, you know what? This is the toughest year of high school that I'm going into. And I think I'm going to double down on what I'm doing here. I'm going to quit the medication. I decided I was going to do that. And I also decided, and wow, this is one of my biggest accomplishments. And I don't share this with too many people. I think this is the first or maybe second time that I've ever shared this on a podcast. I decided not to take the extra time that I was eligible for on my standardized exams, like the SAT and ACT. And boy, I mean, oh my God, the number of people that I know that printed fake slips or suddenly pretended, got a doctor to write off that they had ADD or ADHD or anxiety or something right before their exams and got extra time. I mean, and back then, I don't know how it is now, but back then, I mean, the extra time that you got per section of like the ACT or SAT was insane. Like if I had gotten extra time, I guarantee you, I'm 100% sure that I would have had a 35 overall score, maybe even a 36. I ended up getting a 33 in the ACT and a 34 weighted, 35 in the math section, 34 in the science section. I ended up doing really well. It was like top 1 or 2 percentile on the ACT. And I did that all without the medication. That's honestly something that I knew. I don't know where I gained this wisdom, but I knew that I would look back at that and I give myself a pat on the back. And man, I can feel myself giving that pat on the back now to that inner child in me. So anyway, I decided I wanted to build an identity around my authenticity and what I was starting to feel from back in that, what I started to feel at UM on that college campus during the summer program. I wanted to iterate on what I was feeling. I wanted to commit to that. I wanted to commit to the changes that I was seeing. And so I knew that I had to ditch these old habits, old ways, and that victim mentality. I had to ditch that. I had to ditch it. Again, I don't know where I gained that wisdom. It just felt viscerally, it felt like the right thing to do. So I did that. I asked my parents to hide the medication, and it was extremely difficult. In fact, at one point I asked my parents to hide it, and I ended up stealing some before I asked them to hide it, put it in my room, and I'd pop pills whenever I felt uncomfortable. It was that bad. I was like, yeah, like it was no joke. But slowly but surely, I started to wean off the medication. And I don't mean like taking less. Like I stopped cold turkey. And the way I was able to compensate for those withdrawals was through this lifestyle change. And if you actually look at this, I mean, now I've got, multiple scientific degrees under my belt. I'm in the midst of a biomedical neuroscience master's program, and I can appreciate the underlying science behind these habits and how they raise baseline levels of dopamine, and someone like me that is genetically predisposed, by the way, to low dopamine. I have to live the way I do to find my focus. I am genetically predisposed to have ADD and ADHD. And every day, I mean, as our environment evolves and, we get polluted with notifications and blue light and heavy metals in our food and microplastics and all this bullshit, then obviously the susceptibility to develop ADD or ADHD is increasing by the day. And as people become more aware of this, then obviously, prescriptions are going to go up and, you name it. So all that is to say that I can appreciate the difference that those changes made, and thanks to the habits that I had committed to, I was able to, in a way, compensate for the withdrawals. Either way, it was still the most difficult thing that I had to do because I was putting so much on the line, and that really taxed me psychologically. Because, like I said, it was the most difficult year, the most competitive year of high school. You're applying to colleges. I was taking a ton of AP classes. I took a grand total of like 13 AP classes while I was in high school. Yeah, you're beefing up your resume, you're doing community service, you're doing all the things. And it's unbelievable that I was able to bet my cards and that I bet well. I bet on myself, I bet on my habits, and it really paid off. I actually ended up getting into my dream school, which was, in fact, the University of Miami. And, for the longest time, I wanted to honor my parents and pursue medicine. I felt it was the most rewarding way to help others. And that's what I knew since forever. I knew that I wanted to go into medicine or some field where I was able to help people, help others apply science to improve their quality of life. And yeah, thanks to that commitment that I made, I was able to support myself as a student, ditch the medication, started gaining weight, gaining confidence. And yeah, if it wasn't for those standardized exams, my community service, I wouldn't have gotten into UM on a scholarship because my GPA was not very good. It was like a 3.1 in high school, which is crazy. Um, Either way, I was a good student otherwise. Um, I mean, naturally, things just clicked for me, and I got some good awards, some good scholarships, etc. So on and so forth. All right, let's move on to the next chapter here. Got into UM, very exciting. Ended up changing majors like literally 4 times. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I started shadowing all kinds of doctors, the best of the best, all over the world, thanks to my parents' networks and such. Um, many of them were Harvard trained. Many of them were the yeah. I mean they they were the heads of their hospital or just extremely accomplished physicians. And I got the chance to shadow many of them throughout the U.S. And I realized that they all had one main like frustration, almost like bottled up in common. And it's that their patients kept coming back for the same procedure a few months or a couple years later because ultimately their lifestyle habits weren't addressed and they would, you know, uh, they would revert back to those disease states and ultimately required, you know, more surgery. Like I was shadowing a uh, Dr. Gaedali in Kentucky. He's the head of liver transplant surgery, and he's an incredible researcher. And he had patients that were coming back for their third liver transplant. I was shadowing Dr. Moises Rosenthal here in Miami, interventional radiologist, vascular specialist. Eventually became an obesity medicine doctor after we started working together. But he told me he was sick of unclogging arteries. Estoy cansado de tapar arterias, he would tell me. Because he knew that these people, their issue wasn't the artery per se. I mean, yeah, that was the issue that he had to help them overcome, but they were smokers, they were drinkers, they were sedentary, they ate like crap, or all the above. And so naturally their arteries got clogged, and he hated having to do that. No, even though he took so much pride in his, you know, obviously he takes so much pride in his training, and he's one of the best in the world that, within his specialty. He's just frustrated because he sees a patient walk in, he gets a basic understanding of their lifestyle, and he knows what the real problem is. Like many of the doctors that I shadowed, they knew what the real problem was, and I felt like I could identify with those people. Because the same solution for me, right? It was take more medication, take more medication, more medication, more medication. I had the sweetest psychiatrist on the face of the planet. She did not want to hurt me. She wanted to help me, but hey, she didn't know about lifestyle change. She didn't know about exercise. She didn't know about applied neuroscience and increasing basal dopamine naturally. She didn't know the influence that, feeling like you're authentic can have on your focus. Like there's just so much that they don't know. And God bless her. I don't even remember her name, but she was super sweet, super lovely, and she just wanted to help me in the best way that she could. And so did my parents, God bless them. They put me on medication with the best intentions. But like these patients, the real problem wasn't being addressed. There was an elephant in the room. Um, and I felt like I could identify. So anyway, it wasn't until I switched majors for the fourth time and stumbled upon exercise physiology that I finally felt a sense of satisfaction. And how did that derive? How did I come across that satisfaction? Well, it was simple. I decided to give exercise physiology a shot because, up until that point, I could appreciate the difference that exercise, diet, nutrition, lifestyle had on my well-being, and I wanted to help other people do that. And my first class ever in that major was a basic nutrition and physiology class. I sit in the classroom, professor walks in, and I couldn't believe he was a professor. I mean, this guy was in unbelievable shape, handsome guy, jacked, brilliant, like truly, his IQ and EQ, I mean, unmatched. And just his presence in the room was unlike anything I've ever felt or seen in any classroom in my life. And I had, I mean, so many incredible professors, in my schooling. But this guy was beyond a professor. He was an inspiration. I mean, just being in his presence, you felt inspired. You felt like you wanted to be better. Um, and his name is Dr. Wesley Smith, PhD in physiology and nutrition, head of the nutrition and physiology program at UM. At least he was then. Um, he's an entrepreneur. He's an elite athlete, uh, triathlete. And every time I sat in one of his classes, I learned something about my body, about my health, that I deemed, in my opinion, essential knowledge that every human being had to know. Like I would walk out of that classroom feeling more prepared to take on the world, more involved with my health, more aware of my body. And I would have instances almost on a daily basis in his classes where I'd kind of step back and I'd look around the class and I'm like, I can't believe we have to be in this class paying tuition. I can't believe we have to be here to learn this. Like, this is like knowledge and information that every human being needs to know about themselves. Like, imagine if they did, all these patients wouldn't be coming back. They would understand what they need to do, how they need to live to avoid having issues or to revert the issues that they're having. Or it would help doctors educate their patients, not just on how to prevent disease, but on what could work synergistically with the procedures that they're doing or the medication that they're giving. Like, I was completely blown away. And again, I could identify with this, which is why I could feel the difference and appreciate the difference. So that was a real eureka moment for me. I mean, I'll never forget that first class. My mind was blown, completely blown. And I remember about 3/4 of the way into the class, he mentioned he was doing this internship called Guardrails, and it was a lifestyle medicine internship where you would take his platform that he had co-founded called HealthSnap, which is still around and fucking crushing it. HealthSnap, we would use that as a remote physiological monitoring RPM platform to help UM employees enable healthier habits and track their change, track their data. This is all pre-code, by the way. This is like back then, like nobody was doing RPM. Now it's like anyone is doing RPM. So he mentioned that, and I looked around the class and I'm like, to see if anyone else had the same reaction. Like, I was like, oh my God, like I need to I'm going to sprint. As soon as the class is over, I'm going to sprint through the auditorium and be the first in line. Like, I was like packing my bag like 5 minutes before the class. I knew that I needed to do this. So as soon as the class was over, I literally sprint over. I looked like an idiot because nobody gave a shit. Literally, I think I was the only person that approached him. And I'm like just so excited. Like, he probably was so confused as to why I was so excited. Like, I was like unreasonably excited for this internship. So yeah, I was like, hey man, like I want to do this. Like, it's so exciting. Like, blah, blah, blah. He's like, all right. So to make a long story short, with Guardrails, it really showed me the difference. It showed me that I was on the right track. Finally, after switching my major 4 times, it showed me that I was really on the right track, that I was getting somewhere, because I would show up to do these sessions where I would track, my patients' body composition on an in-body machine, their blood pressure, their heart rate. I would take their measurements, look at their posture, understand what they're eating and how they're living. I would make recommendations based on what I was learning in the classes, etc. And I was texting them value information, and simultaneously I was like putting a few things on Instagram just based on my experience and what I had been learning in classes. And around that time I also that's when I was still shadowing Dr. Moises Rosenthal, and he was doing a procedure at that point in time. It was a relatively new procedure called bariatric embolization, where you embolize or essentially burn off an artery near the stomach that produces the principal hunger hormone ghrelin. So that's what actually makes you hungry. And so you're embolizing, he was embolizing the artery, so you'd produce less ghrelin, you're less hungry, obviously you eat less, you lose weight. But there was a big issue, which was that, again, if the patient's habits weren't addressed, they would develop collateral arteries around the embolization zone. So the blood would come back to the artery, the ghrelin would come back, and the weight would come back. So big issue, a few months or years into a procedure that wasn't covered by insurance. At least I don't think it was. and it was pretty expensive. And boom, you had the same problem. And I started to kind of see that there was like a relationship between these two worlds. What I was learning in school, well, I guess three worlds: my personal experience with my health and taking medication, what I was learning in school, and the demand that I was seeing in real life with these patients in Dr. Roy's office. So the wheels started turning again, as you can imagine. The wheels were turning, wheels were turning, wheels were turning, and I was blown away by that relationship. So I talked to myself, how can I take the next step here? Like, what can we do? And talk about a perfect storm. Dr. Roy, that's his nickname, Dr. Moises Rosenthal, Dr. Roy for short. Dr. Roy had started experimenting with intermittent fasting, something that I was actually learning about in depth in my more advanced nutrition and physiology classes. Intermittent fasting and, metabolic ketosis, the intermittent metabolic switch, going from a fed state to food deprived state. Uh, all kinds of fun stuff. Tapping into the evolutionarily preserved mechanisms, that support our bodies, right? Fasting is incredible. Anyway, Dr. Roy had been experimenting with fasting, different nutrition strategies, exercise, and he was seeing some noticeable progress. He had been dealing with fatty liver for so many years, and he was able to, revert that, at least to an extent at that point. He had lost some weight. He was feeling better. His blood pressure was better. And he felt one day he approached me, and he knew that I was generally interested in these topics, but he approached me and said, hey, I want to give a presentation to my employees to help them get healthier. The people that are working in his office, most of them, there's nurses, but, for example, the folks at the front desk, as in any office, typically those people, are somewhat overweight, sometimes very overweight because they have sedentary lives. So anyway, he wanted to kind of take everyone aside and give a presentation about what he had done and how it helped them in an attempt to help them. And I was like a fly in the wall. I was there listening, et cetera. And we had a good relationship, Dr. Roy and I. And so there were certain points throughout his presentation where he would kind of hesitate or stumble, or maybe didn't go too deep on a mechanism, or just maybe the science just wasn't totally accurate. Not accurate. It's not like he didn't know what he was talking about. He absolutely did. But I felt like there was something missing. And so I would kind of nudge in and make a suggestion here and there. And there was a point where he kind of just looked at me and said, hey man, why don't you take it away? Like, take it away. Tell us how this works. I ended up giving my first presentation ever on, fasting and metabolic ketosis and satiety and a bunch of other things. And everyone was so engaged and like loving it. And obviously, this is what I was passionate about. So, just like with this podcast and all my shows, like I love this stuff, so the energy that I bring to these more nuanced scientific topics, I feel like it really makes a difference. At least I hope it does. And he felt that, and everyone felt that. And so after the presentation that everybody loved, he took me aside and he said, hey, listen, that was incredible. I had no idea you knew so much, or that you were so passionate about this stuff. Listen, I'm doing this procedure. The long-term success rate isn't there. Why don't we start a business? Why don't we start a company and a program that complements the surgery that I'm doing? To make a very long story short, we wrote a book together. I've got it up there on the shelf. We started a company called Hambre y Hormonas, Hunger and Hormones. We were specifically targeting Latin Americans that were in the U.S. that were overweight, had been dealing with insulin resistance, dyslipidemia, cardiometabolic syndrome, obesity, etc. And we were developing lifestyle programs. So we look at their nutrition, their metrics, their sleep, their fitness, etc. We brought on a psychologist. We brought on a functional medicine doctor. And I became the everything from, I was the exercise physiologist, and I was also the main like content creator. I helped write, the book. I was writing the scripts for webinars, for video courses that we made, downloadable materials, etc. And I went from showing up to that office every single day and observing procedures such as placing stents in arteries and all that stuff, in my scrubs and all that good stuff, to just showing up, going straight to Dr. Roy's office, within his office, and writing Like it went from like actually being involved in a clinical setting to just writing, creating. And side by side, I had been creating my Instagram page, and I was growing my following there. You know, making all kinds of applied science accessible to folks around the world. And I had a very small following, then maybe like I don't know, 1,000 followers, maybe not even that, maybe like 500. In fact, the first picture I ever posted on my Instagram account is a picture with him and Dr. Patricia Jaimes. We were the ones primarily involved in Hambre Hormonas. So if you guys scroll far back enough, you'll see that. And that's really where my personal brand and this other business, Hambre Hormonas, were born in Dr. Roy's office, doing what I loved because and doing what I loved and what the world needed and something that I could be paid for. Ikigai. If you guys know what the concept of Ikigai is, it's a Japanese concept that basically it's the blend between these 3 or 4 worlds. Let me quickly search that up. Ikigai. Let's see. So it roughly translates as a reason for being or the thing that you live for. And it's the intersection between what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. So that's where I found my Ikigai in Dr. Roy's office doing what I was doing. And, over the years, we had a very successful company. In fact, it was so successful, our lifestyle program was so successful that we ended up taking people that were candidates for the procedure and we just put them on the lifestyle program instead. And oftentimes those people had better results than, most of the time actually they had better results than the folks that just did the procedure. And especially in the long run, almost everyone that just got the procedure would gain the weight back. I think it was something like over 90%. So very successful, very niche, especially back then, especially for a primarily, predominantly Spanish speaking audience. It was incredible. I had the chance to be interviewed by several big creators about fasting, and I had my first real big live interview with Gendy Ruiz, who's a famous Latin American reporter, and I had to I gave a lecture about intermittent fasting to an audience in the tens of thousands live on TV 2 times. And yeah, I started to, gain recognition and build some serious momentum. And so I would, I'd go to my classes and all of a sudden now, right, I went from having like, going through all these, I changed majors so many times and I was so confused and I wanted to honor my parents and go into medicine. I was a pre-med student. And now I had a real reason to do what I was doing. I cared more. All of a sudden, I really gave a shit about what I was learning. And I make sure to take note of, because obviously, even then, right, like most of the material that you come across in school, you're going to forget the vast majority, or a lot of it is serves really no purpose, considering what you actually want to do, So basically, what I would do is I understood what the world needed at that point. I understand the gaps that I had, and I did well in all my classes. I was, on the president's honor roll, but I made sure to emphasize the content, the information, the topics that really resonated with me in my mission. And I took all of those and I made Instagram posts for them. And I was educating people online with the topics that I felt I had to, retain and that I felt were most valuable for other people. So that helped me double down on this information in a really meaningful way. So if you guys scroll back to my to my older Instagram posts, you'll see scientific style carousel posts that some took me 20 plus hours to make, between all the research that I was getting into and citing, to the actual graphic design. Like I made everything on those posts. I wrote the captions, filled up all the diagrams, all the research. Everything. I made 100% of the work. Right. I spent over 20 hours making these individual posts. I made hundreds of them for my company and Hambre Hormonas. And, my followers maybe spent, I don't know, maybe 20 seconds looking at this. And I knew that I didn't really mind, right? I mean, those who were interested would gain something from it, and I made sure to like I was really trying my best to make the science sexy, So I was helping a lot of people. I mean, the feedback that I got was incredible, and how I applied this in the real world, I mean, it was priceless. I was changing people's lives with this material every single day, whether I was posting about it or speaking about it or you know, you name it. So, and I knew that even though people on Instagram aren't really going to take the time to sit down and read this, I knew that it was still a subtle way to show people my passion and my credibility. You know what I mean? Like the fact that I can say now, go back to my Instagram and you'll see posted to me 20 hours to make that have over a dozen references about some scientific mechanism. Like you probably get the impression that I'm someone that knows what they're talking about and that I put in the work. Like I'm willing to put in the work to understand how things work and to understand how they can help you. And that's something that my parents taught me very early on and something that I honor every single day, right? It makes the ultimate difference. And this was years ago that I was doing this as a very young person. I still do this every single day in a different way, but I do this every single day. So I knew that there was more value there than just the post itself, but it's why I was doing what I was doing and how I was doing it. So yeah, I think those were all very good decisions that I made. I knew, again, I don't know where this wisdom came from, but I knew that in some way, shape, or form, this would all pay off. And I started to get a lot of recognition professionally, also from my professor, Dr. Wes Smith. I became the manager of that internship. I ended up doing research at UM. I became a teacher's assistant. I was a graduate assistant when I was in grad school there for my master's in physiology and nutrition, which unfortunately I didn't get to complete because of COVID. That shut everything down, which is very frustrating. But Dr. West told me, he said, instead of taking BS classes to fulfill this master's degree, which, by the way, I was pursuing under a fully funded research scholarship while I was graduate assistant. I know this, believe me, if there's anyone that's pissed off about COVID related to my studies, it's me. He said, look, focus on your business because you're actually making a difference with your business. And that's my recommendation. And I thank God I took his advice. And if there's anyone that I was going to listen to in that point in time, it was him. And so I doubled down on my company with that I had going on with Dr. Marcel Roysenthal. And I also had my personal brand on the side. So these two things were growing side by side. And I was building momentum very quickly. Anyway, COVID happened. And one of the silver linings for me professionally was that remote physiological monitoring was exploding. We start to see so much value behind, well, what it meant, like the value behind being able to track someone's health remotely. I mean, obviously the hospitals were overwhelmed, but we still had to get a pulse on what was going on with people, and how they were feeling and how they were doing. We had to get very objective about their health outside of the hospital. So RPM, remote physiological monitoring, suddenly became this like, exploded. It started to absolutely explode. It became prolific. And guess what? There were very few people in the world that actually knew what they were doing and that had the specific knowledge and experience to extrapolate that data, understand it, and enable effective, evidence-based, and sustainable lifestyle changes. And I was one of those world-leading experts just as a default. If you've ever read the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, you'll understand what I mean by this. I mean, I was in the right place at the right time, and there was a silver lining with COVID. And all of a sudden, what we were doing was like, I mean, it was a lot more valuable. Let's put it that way. It was priceless. I feel like I've said prices too many times now, so I'm gonna be mindful of it. But anyway, so that happened. And I started to, read books like Outliers, like The 4-Hour Work Week, and I started really thinking about how am I going to scale this? How am I going to continue to grow? How am I going to be a big fish in a small pond? Who do I need to surround myself with? What do I need to double down on? And all of this while, being totally locked in on my health, on my well-being, and making a lot of sacrifices too. I mean, this all sounds fun, but I had to learn to say no at an unreasonable rate, or at least what some people would consider unreasonable. Like I had to make so many sacrifices. I became extremely isolated from my friends, extremely isolated from my family. I started to there was just so much that I had to say no to. It's enough to drive you crazy. Like if I really go at length about what I had to say no to, I'd probably end this podcast being depressed. But I'm in a really good place now, so it's everything worked out. And there had to be a necessary sacrifice. I felt like most of my life up until that point had been honestly completely mediocre, especially as it pertained to school, even on the medication. I felt like mediocre. Like that was mediocre was my word. Like that's just how I felt about myself. I was completely mediocre, and finally, something was clicking. Something was clicking for me. Um, and so yeah, I mean, I started to catapult, and then throughout the years, I kind of thought to myself like, hey, how can I focus on a group of people? Like who is my target audience, as far as my personal brand goes? Eventually, fortunately and unfortunately, Hambre Monas kind of fizzled out. I mean, I kind of lost my passion for it. um I think it had to do with the fact that it was very rewarding to help people that were in those physiological and psychological and physical states, people that were very diseased, that were very sick in their mind and in their body. It was really rewarding to help them turn that around, but it was also extremely difficult. And again, I wanted to, from the get-go, from the very beginning, if we scale this back, you now know that I wanted to prevent the issues that I was seeing. I didn't just want to revert them, I wanted to prevent them. So I knew that now that I had this perspective and that I understood the pain, the physical, physiological, and psychological pain through and through, both in the textbooks and in real life, that these diseases have, I knew that I wanted to prevent what I was seeing. And I wanted to focus on people that I could identify with a little more. So naturally, I gravitated towards younger people. So my personal brand, you know, um, you know, grew to be all about helping people prevent disease. And also, I guess the efforts to prevent disease simultaneously, I mean, can help revert disease, right? It's like the same thing. It's the same change. It just depends where you are and how far along you are with the disease, or, you know, anyway. Um, so I wanted to focus on people, and then I wanted to focus. I mean, the people that I identify with the most are people like myself, high performers, which sounds so pretentious. A high performer is someone who consistently delivers exceptional results in their field, going beyond what's expected, not just once, but repeatedly. They typically combine skill, discipline, and mindset to stand out. But being a high performer isn't just about working hard, producing more. It's about working smarter, staying focused, and doing what matters most with excellence. Core traits: clarity. They know what they want and why it matters. 2, energy. They actively manage their physical and mental vitality. 3, courage. They take bold action, especially when it's uncomfortable. 4, productivity. They focus on high impact tasks, not just staying busy. Influence. They elevate others and lead with purpose. Consistency. They show up even when motivation fades. So it often includes self-awareness, emotional intelligence, the ability to sustain long-term success without burning out, etc. Obviously, I mean, I identify with this. That's what I built my life around in an effort to survive, right? Because to survive and eventually to thrive, but originally to survive. This is the effort that I had to make to get myself out of the situation that I was in. I had to become obsessed with my health in order to compensate for the complete lack of health, the way that I had neglected my health inevitably by taking the meds that I was taking and isolating myself and, being nutrient deficient, etc. So I became obsessed because I felt like I needed that to survive. I felt like I wasn't good enough. And it got to a point, I mean, there's regression towards the mean eventually kicked in, but I overcompensated at one point. And I became that narcissistic, jacked bodybuilder, toxic masculine kind of guy. And then I kind of, regressed towards the mean. And now I like to think I have more, enough maturity to talk about this and have someone like you listen to me, and enough wisdom to do that too. So anyway, I wanted to work with people that were younger, help them prevent disease. And I wanted to work with people that were high performers like me who could appreciate the difference that this had in their life and wanted to have systems built and that kind of regimented, disciplined kind of lifestyle. And also people that enjoyed tracking data, as in the wise words of Peter Drucker, what gets measured gets managed. So I wanted to work with people that could appreciate the numbers. And also, like I said much earlier, I my escape, and even to this day, my escape is video games. I love video games. RuneScape, old school RuneScape specifically, has been my pride and joy for, I mean, since 2006. So that's 20 years of playing RuneScape. Yeah, about 20 years playing RuneScape. I love that game. And yeah, the numbers, right? Leveling up, skilling, etc. So I have always loved gamifying the experience of getting healthier, performing higher, and I knew that my fellow high performers could appreciate that. And so naturally I gravitated into that space. And, through my content online, my collaborations, my podcast, oh my God, starting a podcast was the best growth project I've ever taken on. Because as I said, I was terrified of public speaking. I needed an excuse to connect with experts. I wanted to learn, especially during COVID. That's why I started the podcast. I started the podcast for 3 reasons. Because they had paused my classes and I wanted to keep learning. So I was like, all right, let me have a cool excuse to connect with people around the world that are experts at and the best at what they do in the realms of, fitness, high performance, health, functional medicine, you name it. I want to learn to ask better questions, and I want to get more comfortable just being a leader, having a voice, and eventually making my way up to stages, which was, as I guess most people could say that they're terrified of public speaking. I was not terrified, I was petrified. I had a real trauma response with getting on a stage, like unreasonably uncomfortable, really, really, truly, really, really, really bad. So this was a natural transition, and so I started the podcast. Originally, I did like 10 episodes with friends, and just to kind of get the feel for it. And then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go all in on this. Like, fuck it. I got really nice equipment because I wanted to hold myself accountable, and I also wanted to record any conversation I had to the best of my ability because, who knows, maybe I tapped into something really special. I wanted to capture it and preserve it so I could look back at it, or anyone else could look back at it years later and derive some value from it. So I started the podcast, and that's when things started to really catapult because I was connecting with the best in the world on a weekly basis. And I was growing more confident. I was learning to be a better listener. A lot of people think starting a podcast, you're just going to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. I do way more listening than I do speaking. And I think that's more valuable because, especially when you connect with people that know something that you don't. And this is whether it's professional or personal. When you're just in a conversation, being the best listener that you can be is going to help you more than it hurts you. Everybody wants to talk first and talk more. Be a better listener. The other person's going to feel heard. They're going to feel more special. And anything that you say next is going to carry more weight because you listened and you understood the context. So I've learned to become a better listener, to ask better questions. I've learned to improve my working memory, which means that, in a conversation, as someone speaking, I might have questions and I literally, in my head, I stack those up while I'm listening and I consider the context of what they're saying, and I'm able to piece these things together. And then when I follow up after they finish saying what they're saying, I can pinpoint whatever it was they said and interject questions strategically. And oh my God, I mean, that's the reason I have such a successful podcast. And why my guests love joining me on the show. So this is something that I learned and that I committed to. So anyway, podcast started catapult, personal brand started catapult. I found myself in circles of high performers on a consistent basis. I started going to conferences. I started my community. I was consistent on social media, etc. And I started to now really grow like a solid business. A few years into COVID, I moved out of the sailboat that I was living in, Coconut Grove, offshore actually. I was living on my friend's sailboat for over a year, and that's where I learned a lot about independence, about having to figure things out, and just living my life on my own terms. And I moved out of the sailboat into my parents' house, started the podcast, was with them for COVID. And then as soon as my business was making enough money, I was coaching and consulting clients online on health and performance. I moved out to South Beach, where I currently live. And I've been here for 5 years. At one point in time, I actually spent 3 months living in New York and a year living in Uruguay as I was flying around the world with one of the board members of Airbnb, multi-billionaire. That I was, the head health coach and physiologist for, managing all his health and his medical, and you name it, everything from the snacks he had on his jet to sourcing the best dentist, no matter where he was in the world, to telling his chef what to eat and how to prepare it based on his blood work and biometrics and genetics. You name it. That was super cool. But I found myself in these circles of high performers, slowly but surely. And on a personal level, I maintain and I have maintained this high performance lifestyle. I'm obsessed with productivity and all these things. And anyway, um, so I ended up working with a lot of really cool people, and I became a big fish in a small pond. There was a book that I read during COVID called Psycho-Cybernetics by, I think it's Maxwell Maltz. And it's an old book, but that book teaches you a lot about the power of your self-image, and it actually takes you through exercises that you can enable to um, visualize and speak, basically program your subconscious to pursue decisions, habits, and behaviors. And I mean like micro habits, micro behaviors, micro decisions. Like your subconscious it ends up making up over 90% of your decisions every day, right? It's just automatic. It's like it ends up it's your identity, your personality is your subconscious. And by visualizing what you want, how you want to be perceived, how you want to feel, how you want to look, how you want to speak, the life that you want to live with extreme specificity, like being as specific as possible, with vivid detail, and assigning positive reinforcement by finding joy in these visuals. Now you are positively reinforcing what you're seeing and what your subconscious believes to be true. If you visualize at such a level of depth and specificity, you're reinforcing habits and decisions that your subconscious can't tell the difference between reality and what you're imagining. And all of a sudden now, as you go throughout your day to day, you start making decisions that are aligned with that vision beyond your conscious awareness that bring you closer and closer to that ideal version of yourself. So I learned this with that book, and I started doing that through COVID, and it's completely changed my life. And I also took what I was learning from the 4-Hour Workweek, from the Almanac of Naval Ravikant, books like Traction, etc., the Personal MBA, and I started to create my dream life. And I knew from the beginning, as I was living in South Beach, I knew that I wanted, I don't know, again, I don't know where I gained this wisdom. I don't know, but I committed to building my business around my lifestyle, not my lifestyle around my business. Like I knew it was important to me, time with my friends, my family, for me, my hobbies, my freedom. I knew that I wanted to preserve that at all costs. And so I knew that I had to create a lifestyle around that. I didn't want to like help a lot of people, make a name for myself, make a bunch of money, and then say, all right, now I want to live my life. No, I knew that my lifestyle, I mean, literally from a neuroscience perspective, right? At this point, you feel like you know me. You should, at this point, you should know me well enough to understand and appreciate that I had to live my life a certain way to perform and to feel good about myself and to support my brain. So it's not like that was a privilege anymore. I mean, yes, it is a privilege, but it's like my responsibility in order to be the professional that I am and that I wanted to be then is I had to maintain. It wasn't even a choice. I had to maintain this lifestyle. And by the way, uh, this became an even, you could call it, harsher reality when I got results for my first genetic test back, 23andMe, which has been shown to be a complete scam and dangerous. But 23andMe showed me and confirmed my ADD predisposition, in a sense, through a Parkinson's predisposition that I have, which can be explained. Parkinson's is not, it's not this simple, but you could say that Parkinson's is a neurodegenerative disease that takes place in the substantia nigra of the basal ganglia, where dopamine's produced. You have lower dopamine that you produce, and then low enough dopamine gives you Parkinson's. It leads to all kinds of twitches and muscle contractions, and it's terrible. It's a terrible disease. Anyway, I have a predisposition for Parkinson's, and I also have a predisposition for hemochromatosis, meaning I store too much iron. And the combination of storing too much iron, particularly in the substantia nigra of the basal ganglia, that exacerbates low dopamine. And on top of that, if you look at the literature on Parkinson's, ADD, it's all that good stuff. If you were diagnosed with ADD, if you have a diagnosis for ADD, you are 100 times, I believe it's 10 or 100 times more likely to have early onset Parkinson's. And then if you were medicated for it on top of that, it's like a 1,000 times, 100 to 1,000 times more likely to have early onset Parkinson's. So basically, I know through and through that I need to live my lifestyle the way that I do. I don't have a choice. If I had gone into medicine and became a doctor, I would have probably ended up being super depressed, and I'd probably have Parkinson's right now. So I knew that I had to live my lifestyle this way. People see me, it's fascinating. Like, there's so many people that don't know what it takes to really be an entrepreneur and to sustain support yourself and do your own thing, and all the sacrifice and the courage and the investment, financially, spiritually, emotionally, physically. Like, it's so much. There's a reason why most people don't do it, or most people fail, and being an entrepreneur is extremely difficult, but I literally can't afford to have it any other way, because I think Parkinson's is even more difficult, and there's much more suffering to no avail. There's no like net benefit in that suffering. Life just sucks. So I chose this, and now I've been reassured in that through a harsh reality that I have to live my life this way. So yeah, I was able to finally, make enough money to have my own apartment, move to South Beach, build my life around what I believe is valuable for me. And I've just grown consistently throughout the years. I've learned that one of the most important and most meaningful ways to be successful in anything is who you surround yourself with, having the right team. I've gone through so many team members, a lot of people that helped me very early on, but then ended up becoming or being extremely toxic. I've gone through all kinds of, I've built and destroyed many bridges. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on myself and on my business. My lifestyle at this point cost me about 120K, 150K a year to maintain my lifestyle. And listen, I don't think that I live lavishly. I think I honestly spend very reasonably. I invest most of my money. Most of my money goes into my business. Yeah, it's not cheap. I like to spend on good food, on meaningful experiences with people that I care about. But it costs money. Anyway, so I've learned that there's a few key takeaways that I want to leave you guys with. They often say that it's not what you know, it's who you know. In my experience, in order to find those who you know style people to surround yourself with, that can help you grow and give you opportunities and you can exchange value with, you have to know something. You better know something. And even if what you know is just as simple as, hey, I'm passionate about this, as I say, don't fall in love with potential, but hey, I'm passionate about this. This is what I want to learn. This is what I want to commit to. Then those who you know people might be there and they might mentor you. They may support you in some way, shape, or form. And eventually, as I have shown, the proof is in the pudding, they will give you more opportunities later into the future, or you'll be able to derive some kind of opportunity, once you've built that relationship with said mentor or business partner. So it's not what you know, it's who you know, but you better know something. And that starts with you, knowing yourself, knowing what you're passionate about, your why. Simon Sinek's golden circle concept changed my life forever. And it really helped change my trajectory in such an incredible way. Also kk.org, the 1,000 true fans concept. I know it might sound like I'm just rattling off random resources, but these very much fall in line with the context of this conversation where it stands currently. Those are great resources that help you understand the power of a personal brand and having a solid why, and the difference that between people investing in something because it's nice and because it's in line with what they believe. You want to create something. In my opinion, I think if you want to do meaningful work, you want to create something that people can believe in. And that's going to hold you accountable and keep you consistent in ways that working for the sake of making money can't. I'm here to help people. I'm here to help people discover their signs and optimize their lives. I think that if more people harness the power of interoception, that deep bodily awareness, as I did when I was going through my journey and sitting in my early nutrition and physiology classes, that they're going to have agency and autonomy to change their lives around for the better. They're going to realize how this modern world takes us further and further from the world within us. The world within us grows linearly from one generation to the next. That takes decades for even a marginal change that we can't even, I guess we could measure, but it's not something that you can really see or feel, right? Whereas the world around us, this modern world, this modern environment, evolves exponentially every single day. The world within us is identical to what it was tens of thousands of years ago, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of years ago. It's almost identical, right? Like it's whereas the world around us has completely transformed. The way that it influences us is insane. I mean, right now I'm sitting in a room full of EMF and artificial light. I'm staring out this window because it's at least is a little more natural and parasympathetic and helps you stay focused in this conversation, but one-sided conversation. But yeah, I mean, if you can acknowledge that, if you can appreciate that gap between the world within us and the world around us, and you gain that interoception, that deep bodily awareness, and you have that agency, that autonomy, you realize your true power, then you can align your decision making, your logic, the way that you carry yourself with who you really want to be and how you really want to feel. And that's everything. If you're a victim to the modern world, if you can't appreciate what I'm saying here, you will be a victim to the modern world, to this modern environment. You're going to end up eating processed food. You're going to buy whatever has the best marketing and catches your eyes in the grocery store. You're going to be doom scrolling online, wasting away at your focus and your attention and your time and your presence. You're going to be probably watching porn or swiping on dating apps with the illusion of choice. You're going to be drinking alcohol or taking drugs or smoking weed to self-soothe because you're deeply dissatisfied with yourself and you feel the pain of your life, but the pain has no purpose. You maybe feel depressed or anxious or isolated or lacking confidence. Maybe you're overweight, you're on track for disease, or you're already in the disease state. And I mean, above all, you don't feel authentic. You don't feel value for who you are. You don't feel confident. I know this is really triggering and wow, so difficult to hear and to feel, but that's the result of just living in this modern world. You can't compete with the trillions of dollars behind all this technology, behind your phone. I mean, just think about how much time we spend on our fucking phones, wasting away on our fucking phones. Look at your screen time right now. Go into your iPhone or whatever phone you have and look at how much time you're actually spending on your phone. Multiply that out for the year, for the next couple decades. I've had countless clients that spend that are spending inevitably a quarter to a third of their life, if not more, on their cell phone, doing bullshit. And it's difficult to blame them because, again, these algorithms getting smarter and smarter. They're showing you more of what they think you want every day to keep you hooked. How are you going to fight back? You don't even know that you can fight back until you realize what I'm saying here, that you have that agency, that you have that power, that you have mechanisms built within you that are ancestral, that have been preserved in our evolution, right? You have these mechanisms, you have these reward mechanisms, and they're being exploited every single day with processed food, with blue light, and all this artificial this stimulus. You're just overstimulated, and so your baseline of dopamine drops, and now you need more and more and more and more of this bullshit just to feel good about yourself. And at a baseline, without these things that are so stimulating, you feel depressed. And you know what? The best way to fix that? The best way to fix that is by doing exactly what I did. Understanding that you have agency and autonomy and committing to lifestyle habits that are consistent with your success as a human being, moving your body, recovering from stress and sleeping, because exercise is stressful, surrounding yourself with a community, being authentic, doing what you love and figuring that out and committing to it, taking that leap of faith. I mean, it's unbelievable. Today, I help countless men all over the world to regain that power. And so many of the men that I help, my niche is in high performers. Like, it's insane how much, even high performers, it's insane how much they leave on the table, and because they don't honor and respect and understand how their bodies work. A lot of the guys that I work with are the best in the world at what they do, but it came with an unreasonable amount of sacrifice in other areas of their life because they didn't have their health. And now they're afraid because they realize that now their health is a big enough problem where it's going to, or it's already eating away at their performance and their quality of life, time with their families. They get a diagnosis. They realize their heart is messed up. Their arteries are getting all clogged up, and they need to change. And a lot of the work that I do, yeah, I mean, a lot of it is I give, data-driven, evidence-based health advice that a lot of people already know. They've seen it on social media. They've heard about it on a podcast, but it's not what I say. It's how I say it. It's how I identify with them. It's how I build a relationship with the people that I help. And it's also how I help them integrate this into their life seamlessly in a way that actually agrees with them, in a way that they can identify with, in a way that is as effective as possible, as unique to them as possible, and helps them regain that power on a personal level. So it's not what I say, it's how I say it, when I say it, and how I help to integrate a system of health and high performance into their life so they can leverage their health rather than sacrifice it to do what they're good at. And doing what they're good at doesn't just mean their jobs. It also means, how do they come home and spend time with their families? How present do they feel? How capable are they at regulating the nervous system after a long day, getting the sleep that they need to perform the next day, rather than relying on stimulants, on caffeine, nicotine, Adderall, etc. How do you? And a lot of people that I help, they're doing all the things, right? They're fasting, they're doing cold exposure, heat exposure, they are doing the HIIT training, the weightlifting, they're taking all the supplements, they're doing all the tests, but they're overdoing it. Less is more when you know how to effectively recover and regulate your nervous system, and when you know how to integrate this into your lifestyle. So again, the pride and joy that I have in doing my work is unlike anything else in my life. I mean, I truly feel like I'm pursuing my life's purpose every single day. I live the life that I preach, very much so. I'm very much a CEO. I mean, especially as of this past year, when bringing on my COO Max Ross, and having a world-class team of everything from videographers and editors and copywriters and people that are scripting our ads and building our funnels, and the mentorship. Shout out to Marco. Having my Swiss Army knife Samar, based in Pakistan, that I found. I mean, I'm going to write a book about Samar at some point, but he's my Swiss Army knife. I have Daniela, who's my customer success manager, and other people that we've worked with in the past who, God bless them, but they weren't a good fit for us. We've really nailed this, and it's incredible now to be able to look back and acknowledge that things really worked out, and that I, staying true to myself and my values, being as authentic as I could be, showing up every single day and doing what I do, has helped me get here. I mean, it worked. You know what I mean? Like, it's such a relief. Like, I'm sitting here right now in Miami Beach in my dream home that I bought 2 weeks ago, just after turning 28 years old. And every year I have the chance to help hundreds of men radically transform and upgrade their health, their performance, their well-being, their quality of life. And this home here, I mean, it's surreal. It's such a beautiful place. The location couldn't be more perfect. Everything about it is perfect. And I'm sharing this because I just can't believe that it all worked out. But at the same time, I knew that it would. And I knew that it would because this commitment that I made to myself, to be true to my values, to be authentic, and to just do what I knew was right, no matter what people thought about me, and saying no a lot to people, activities, commitments that weren't totally aligned, it fucking worked out, you know? Like it really worked out. Like I made it. And I have difficulty saying that I made it. I have difficulty saying that because it's something that anybody can say and it's just words. But the satisfaction that I feel in my heart when I say that, because when I think about this place that I'm in now, right? It's the way that God and the universe rewarded me for having such a meaningful influence on the lives of so many people. People like you, people that have supported me, people have believed in me. And I've always believed in myself, but it's not always easy. You motherfuckers bet on me. I bet on myself. And here I am, living the American dream. I can't believe it. Life is almost not real. Life feels like it's a video game that just kind of spiraled out of control. It really feels like a game. And every single day, all I do is play. I don't think I've ever had a real day of work in my life. And I mean, if I took any one of you guys into my life and you saw what I do every single day, you'd be like, this motherfucker works harder than anyone I've ever met. It's not that like I'm just grinding away, doing difficult things and being aggressive with my growth. But you'll notice that my entire lifestyle ties into how I perform at work. I wouldn't be able to share what I'm sharing with such presence and such focus and intention and clarity if it weren't for the workout that I did this morning at Muscle Beach with my community of gentlemen, getting in the water after a really tough workout, building that camaraderie, going to get my haircut because getting my haircuts with Julian Mecca, it's a $200 haircut. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but it has helped me step into my excellence, feel super confident. I ate like a king today. Just my grandpa made me some his liver dish for my birthday. It was my birthday gift for my grandpa. He made me his liver dish. I had it with some jovial cannellini beans, hydrated today. Took my supplements. I feel incredible, and this allows me to approach my work, which I guess this is my work. You know what I mean? This is it. Feeling like a trillionaire. Like I feel amazing. I'm so happy. I'm so grateful. A few days after I bought my house and surprised my parents with it, I had no idea. You know, I spent 40 days from the moment that I saw this place and knew that I wanted it up until the closing. It was about 40 days. I invited them over for Shabbat dinner, said it was my friend's place, and I surprised them. And I thanked them, and I gave them a whole speech on how, thanks to everything that they've shown me, both the good and the bad that I've seen in them, has brought me here. And I also, well, yeah, anyway, and so, you know, my girlfriend was there, and one of my best friends, Hadiel, was there, who was also my mortgage broker. And it was a perfect evening. It's unbelievable what's possible, you know. It's just unbelievable how perfectly things can work out. There's obviously a lot here that I'm not considering, that played a role in my success, you know, personally and professionally and financially and spiritually and emotionally and, you know, etc. But I'm trying my best to share as much as I can, and I'm trying to do that in a way that can give you, you know, the most value at the end of the day. There's absolutely survivorship bias, but if there's anything that you take away from this, it's whatever that thing is that you want to do, whatever it is that lights you up, that gives you a reason, what to whatever you find joy in, do it and do it well. Do it and do it well, and learn to say no a lot, and realize that you're going to have to delay gratification to the extent where you're going to have to make extreme sacrifices. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. You will be rewarded. we are so fixated on instant gratification that it is becoming more difficult every single day to do something meaningful, especially in the age of AI, when anyone now has an unfair advantage as far as how much they can create and how many eyes they can get. But they're not building real willpower. They're not building real wisdom. And they're people that rely on AI are becoming dumber and dumber every single day, even though on the surface they might look smarter. Do the hard work, do the difficult thing. The obstacle is the way, and nothing good comes easy. Nothing good comes easy. This whole process, and I mean, just reflecting on my life, I mean, it's, getting closer to God has also made an incredible difference. I was originally atheist and then agnostic, as any scientist, or rather most scientists. And then eventually, as I really got into the science and literature and just started to appreciate how magic it really was and how everything just works out so perfectly, I started to believe in God. And as of this past year, with my girlfriend, Gami, who I love very dearly, very much, we've gotten closer to God. And as I've gotten closer to God, all of the magic that has been taking place in my life, the magic that takes place on a daily basis, the reason I have this home, the reason I get to do what I love every single day and help so many people in such a meaningful way and have such meaningful relationships and connections. And I mean, it's God's work. There's a certain kind of magic that science can't explain but can't deny exists. And it's God. So thank God. Thank God. Anyway, that's all for now. I want to say thanks to all who listen, especially this far. I want to say thanks to everyone who supported me. Thanks to my parents. Thanks to my friends. And thanks to all the people that thought that I was crazy. I know I'm fucking crazy. But now they're asking me how I did it, which is why I made this episode. How does the process go? Let me see. First they ridicule you for it. First they make fun of you, they ridicule you for it. Then they ask, I don't know. Eventually they ask how you did it. And so, I'm humbly, I'm more than happy to share what's worked for me. And if there's anyone tuning in that is looking for a mentor, I mean, I'm extremely busy, but if you're still listening and you feel that I can be a real mentor for you, or that I can help you in some way, shape, or form, send me an email. Tell me why. I'd love to see if I can help. I believe in paying it forward, and if I get to help someone change their life, that's a blessing. All right. That's all for now, folks. Thank you. God bless you. And as I always say, I'll see you on the other side.